man. Legacy Lounge. Sometimes people want to talk.
We have an incredible guest here.
What's up, brother?
The definition of the Legacy Lounge is the stuff that he's putting together. He's a great community leader. His story is amazing.
All right. Episode 12, featuring Olivia Barret. Rene, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you here, Olivia.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
We know a lot of, obviously, the same mutual people, and it's not ironic that we're at this space. We've been here for 2 weeks. Beautiful space that's owned by our friends Sam and Micah. But man, we were talking for a good solid 20, 30 minutes before the podcast started, but I'm really, really excited to have you here. You're somebody that I look up to. In all of my time in selling real estate, I would definitely say I've learned the most from you. So
Thank you.
kudos to
Chris
you.
talks about you all the time. That's why I wanted to hear the story behind it. We all have different routes.
I don't think he knows the story of you.
I know. He probably doesn't, but the fact that, we know so many real estate agents and everything. You have such a good name in the industry, but everybody's path to get to their position of power is different, and I'm always fascinated by it. So that's why I was looking forward to it.
Yep. I mean, I know that we're going to hear a lot about just your story before real estate, which I'm super excited to hear about. But just to keep on touching on that, I had a couple of people when I mentioned that we're having you on the podcast, like, why would you have a competitor realtor on the podcast? I'm like, geez, Louise. I mean, come on. We have our own clients that love and trust us. I've referred clients to you that weren't a good fit for me. You and I feel, are just like, we're definitely polar opposite of personalities. But I think the world of you. You've been always very generous in offering your expertise. And I wanted just to share this quick story. I feel like a lot of the general public, right, when it comes to, let's say you own a home and you want to remodel a home. A majority of people, the first thing they do is they look for a general contractor, right? And I was one of those people. When I did my very first flip, I look back at it and I'm like, I think my partner and I at the time, we grossed somewhere around 150 to 175,000. But I look back at that, I'm like, we probably could have made closer to 300,000. Maybe not that much, but at least 250 if we did it the way that you taught me, right? And so I just want to just give you your flowers. And you have so much knowledge. We'll touch on that. But as far as how you approach a deal, how you pick it apart, and I really feel when you add that to your clients, just the value that you bring to them is second to none. I know that we live in a world in real estate where I feel like social media plays a big part in this, but when I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, it feels like this person's trying to flip homes and this person's flipping homes and everyone's flipping homes, right? And I'm always looking for the person that can do it just a little bit differently. And I know that when I approach it myself, that's the value that I want to bring to my clients, and I know that you do that for your clients. So that's my long-winded story on that. But Olivia, why don't you bring us to really the starting point? So I want to know where you're from, and just a little bit of your background, maybe even take us all the way back to like, where did you go to high school? And I want to know kind of what was on the horizon at that time when high school was ending, and just kind of bring us to light on all that.
Sure. So I grew up in Sacramento, but my dad became a diplomat when I turned 14. I was living in Rosemont at the time, so I was supposed to go to Hiram Johnson. But there was a special program at that time that you could test in to go to McClatchy. So I tested in to get into McClatchy in their HISP program.
Wow.
And another person did that as well. He lived in West Sacramento. He was supposed to go to River City, and he tested in to get to McClatchy. That's Ricky. So Ricky is my husband. So we met in a god-awful early class at McClatchy.
That's great.
We would sit across the room from each other and like goo eyes and stuff at each other. So we went to homecoming together and stuff, and about halfway through the year my dad became a diplomat, and so we had to move to Japan. So I had to break up with Ricky. So he was my first like real boyfriend.
Is that freshman?
I was freshman year
Okay.
of high school. So I'm on the plane and crying, and my dad's like, "You'll never think about that guy again." It's fine.
Famous
it's
last
funny,
words.
I actually have a 5x7 photo of Ricky that has like on the back of it, he wrote, "I'm glad you're coming to homecoming," like all this kind of stuff on it, and I have it to this day.
Wow.
But he played football when I knew him. And so I wasn't there for the baseball season. So I had no idea he even played baseball at all. So I first went to Virginia. My dad had to do training there, language training, for about 6 months. And then we moved to Japan. So I lived in Japan for my sophomore and junior year. And then my senior year, we moved to a little Caribbean island called Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of, I had 14 people in my grade.
Oh,
We went
my
from
goodness.
McClatchy that year. A freshman class was 1,000 people.
Uh-huh.
I went from that to 14. So it was interesting. There was people from all around the world too, and I think that kind of shaped, how I interact with people.
Yeah.
You didn't have cliques. There was 14 people.
Yeah.
That's it. And so there's no like, cool kids and like, we call them science people who hung out in science pod at McClatchy and stuff. Like there's just different, groups. You just didn't have that.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool experience. Also, you could drink there. So we would go out every weekend in Japan and in Trinidad and Tobago.
My goodness.
Trinidad, the drinking age was 16. I don't actually know, honestly, what it is in Japan. All I knew is that I used my student ID to get into clubs, and that's, what we did.
That's crazy.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 3. I have an older sister. She's 2 years older than me. I have a younger sister, Maddie, my assistant. She's 8 years younger than me, and I have a brother who is 10 years.
I'm
younger
sorry,
than me.
but this is the wildest thing in the world. I never knew Maddie was your sister.
Stop it.
Swear to God.
Chris, you did not know that Maddie's my sister? Maddie has been my assistant for as long as I've been an agent, 12 years. She started off as my nanny, and then she is now, she's been my assistant ever since then. She's always
Mind
worked for
blown.
me.
So when you were in Japan, like in getting into these clubs, like were you hanging out with your sisters at all or friend? No, okay.
No, just friends. So it's kind of interesting when you are overseas, you live in a compound. And so like all of the diplomats live in it's a gated, it has these like big cinder block walls around it, and that's your compound. And then there is these entertaining homes, so that's for the ambassador. So there's a massive home, and then it's like surrounded by all these other ones. Well, in Japan, it was kind of interesting because we got there and they gave us the ambassador's residence. We had this enormous home, and it had this huge pool, and this really long front room that was meant for entertaining other, politicians and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, this is really weird. Like, why? It was my dad's first boat. Like, why did we get this massive house? And it's because of how many kids that we had. They had to accommodate that by bedrooms, but also because they had determined that someone could throw a bomb over the wall and get the ambassador's residence.
So
they moved the ambassador out of the compound and into a totally different home, and then gave us that home.
That's crazy.
I did not know that until we were living there, and realized that my bedroom was the first room that, like, from where the wall was.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it was kind of neat because I had a whole floor to myself. Like we had cheerleading practice at my house because it was so big. And everybody in Japan lives in tiny little apartments. And so that's not common. So on Fridays, all my friends would come home to my house, and we would stay there all weekend. And so everybody would just like be at my house all weekend.
That sounds
long.
incredible.
Yeah, my parents were they were so cool about it. So you get everywhere by the train in Japan.
Yeah.
So, but the train shut down at midnight.
Okay.
There's no crime in Japan. So
Yeah.
they don't worry about you going out.
Got
They
it.
didn't really worry about us at all. So we just kind of
So what's the
did our
bomb
thing.
scare? Is that no crime, but you're worried about a bomb coming over the wall? Like, what?
Yeah, I mean that's like if
That's
somebody was.
politics. That's politics.
Yeah. You know what's
Crazy.
funny though? So I used to. My very first job ever was working at the embassy, and they would have protests just like they do everywhere, right? But in Japan, they would actually sign up to protest. So you had like a designated time. So it was like, okay, you know, you can come and protest between 10 and 12, you know? And it's not an intimidating protest. Like I would walk straight through them to get to lunch and come back.
Yeah.
And I was like, no issue.
That's
you know,
crazy.
there.
Oh,
But it was
man.
great. So we would go out and we would go to clubs. Like we were well known because we were foreigners, you know? And so they wanted us to come to the clubs. We got free drinks. Like we were 16, 17
Rock
years
stars
old. Like,
is
it
over
was
there
great.
then.
You know what's so crazy about this story? Like initially when you hear it, I would hear like a lot of kicking and screaming, and my life is over because you're leaving. You know,
I did think my life was over originally. I
but
really did.
Now, as you're telling the story, I'm
best
like, this
experience
sounds
of my
out
life.
of this just sounds out of a movie.
It does.
Like how cool that must have been awesome.
It was insane. Well, and it was kind of interesting though too. I know this is also strange, but my mom was born and raised in Japan. Her parents were missionaries. So she's blonde hair, green eyes, but she spoke fluent Japanese, as did all of her siblings. There were 6 of them. And so when she came to the States as an adult, she met my dad. And then she never spoke to us in Japanese when we were little, except for when she was reprimanding us. It was silly. So we'd be like at a store and she would like reprimand us in Japanese. And I'm like, Mom, you are calling more attention to yourself by reprimanding us in Japanese than in English.
hilarious.
Everybody's looking at us,
Yeah.
you know. But to see them all together, they all speak fluent Japanese. And so she started teaching Japanese when I was 7 years old at the Buddhist temple downtown. It doubles as a Japanese school on weekends. It's called Sakura
I
Gakuen.
know exactly
She
where it is.
had me go there since I was 7. I would go every Saturday to Japanese school to learn Japanese. And so I was never able to do traditional sports because they always had games on Saturdays. So I would go to Japanese school all day on Saturdays. And I thought, who would ever think to speak to me in Japanese or that I would know it? And then sure enough, the first
you go.
post was Japan. So it actually worked out okay.
So do you know how to speak Jap?
I'm not good at it anymore, honestly. I will never forget hiragana and katakana. So there's 3 alphabets, and I had to write them every single Saturday morning. And so I will never forget
Yeah.
hiragana and katakana. Kanji is over 1,000 plus characters, and when you combine them, there's something different. So I was never proficient in kanji, but I could get by speaking when I lived there. I just went to Tokyo. We took our kids for the first time a few months ago. And I can get us around. Like I can order, I can, get directions and kind of say very basic things. But I can't conversate with anybody.
I feel like literally over the last like 6 months, Kendra and I were talking about this. We've had so many friends that have gone to Japan and come back and just tell us how much they absolutely loved it.
It's our favorite place. And I've lived in a lot of countries and states. It is by far my favorite place to have lived.
My wife is half Japanese and no interest in going out there, babe.
What?
We gotta go. We gotta
Marie,
go.
if you're
I want to go
listening,
so bad. I want to so bad. Like I
mean,
don't know why.
to me, because I know Marie, it sounds like the perfect place just because it is. It's
so
super clean. Food is next.
Maybe the length of travel is maybe the biggest hurdle.
They have
but-
medicine for that. And by the way, we know we the point system now. We upgrade to business class. I'm not sure. Did you guys do that? That family of 4.
We didn't when it was the 4. When Ricky played baseball there, they put us on business class on Japan Airlines.
Was that
It
incredible?
was a
Different.
game changer. I was
Different.
like, oh my God, how am I going to travel from here on?
I know.
Because
It ruins
it was
you.
amazing with their like hot towels and like it was it was an experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
That's so awesome.
Okay, so did you end up graduating in Japan? I know that
No, in Trinidad.
Trinidad,
So,
right?
Yeah. So I moved
Yeah.
to my senior year was in Trinidad and Tobago, which was this little Caribbean island. It was amazing.
Did you think your life
so
was
cool.
ending again when you were moving
Absolutely
away?
not. I was like, we're going to a Caribbean island.
Oh, you were okay.
Heck yeah.
Gotcha.
Um, from at that point, once I moved the first
Mm-hmm.
time, even just to Virginia, I love moving. I have
Got
no
it.
issue with. There's nothing that makes me nervous. I
love
love
it.
it. I thrive on it. I love meeting new people. My siblings, it was different. They did not take on to that as much,
Yeah.
but I loved it.
That has to play a part in who you are today. I
100%.
have to say that
agree.
because the one thing that I know about you is I think you are this, you appear this, just let's go. Fearless, you don't flinch. And like I would say, if I were to describe you to other people, I'm like, she is a extremely confident person.
Yeah, I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like,
What's the point?
Yeah, it's fun. It's an adventure. Everywhere we've moved, even we went to Venezuela when they were going through their elections. There
Oh,
was
wow.
they had
That was a
actually
dangerous
this was
place.
with Ricky when he was playing in the off season. They had evacuated the embassies and all Americans were gone. The only people who were left were the ball players and some wives. A lot of the wives left and went back to the States.
That would have been hella scary.
It was actually really scary because I didn't speak the language and I didn't know what was going to happen. They were voting on whether or not to be a communist country. And I was like, so if that happens, am I going to be hauled off somewhere? And there's no embassy, so I have no protection whatsoever.
Goodness.
So I almost got kidnapped there. I mean, it was just a crazy
Oh my goodness.
thing. It was but it was an experience,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't change it for anything. I mean, we were rationed with water. I don't know if you being rationed with water is something that you take things for granted and you don't realize. But we had certain times of the day that you could not shower, flush the toilet, wash your hands, nothing for hours on end, and you couldn't. So it was just kind of an experience. That's all. And everything was there was no chicken certain days. There was no milk the entire time that we were there. And I always knew what people were rationed at that time because it's what literally every single person had in their hand at the grocery store.
That's crazy.
I didn't speak the language, but I knew everybody was holding a bag of rice. Rice is being rationed right now. You just knew it.
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
At what point do you look at your partner? Because were you guys married already at that time?
We were married already.
I would have been, man, Ricky, I love you, and I love your dreams of playing ball, but we got to go back home now.
I didn't. I don't know why. It was hard. So one of the wives, one of the girlfriends showed up when the guys were, they would leave for a week and they would come back for a week. So they would have games in town for a week and then they would be gone for a week.
Got it.
So she showed up and she got sick on the plane. And so there was a pharmacy down the street. And it was already dark out. And by the way, you don't need a prescription for anything. You just have to know how to say it. And that's it.
That's how it should be here, by the way. But
It was so we had to walk down the street, right? And it's dark and I was like, ooh, girl, we're in Venezuela.
Yeah.
I don't know about this. So, but she was really sick. She wanted them. So I'm like, okay, I'll take you down. And so we started walking and this van approaches us. And I'm like, oh my God. And the van door opens and there is 3 men on the inside of the van. And then there is a guy driving and a guy next to him. And so I put her on the other side of me and I'm like, just keep walking. Don't look up, I have my mace, but that's all. I used to practice on the rails of I would run back and forth along the hotel to practice spraying mace. But yeah, I mean, I'm like, what is mace going to do against 5 guys? What am I going to do? And so you could see the pharmacy right above and there was a light on the parking lot and there was a cop car there. Oh, that's the only thing that I could think spooked them, and they took off because all of a sudden they slammed the door shut and they took off. And I went, oh my God, which is crazy because actually the police are more corrupt than you don't want to get stopped by the police in Venezuela. So it was scary. And I was like, oh, we're not doing that anymore.
No.
The taxis would just be like somebody just decided to write on a little cardboard thing, taxi. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to go into their car.
Man.
You know, that's the way it is.
Oh my goodness.
So anyway, so that, I'm all the way to Venezuela, but back to high school.
Yeah.
So my very first job I ever had was in Japan. I worked at the U.S. Embassy there. So if you are in another country under someone else's visa, so we were there under my dad's visa, right? You're a dependent.
Yep.
So if you work at the embassy, they will automatically give your dependents a job.
Got it.
Because you can't work in that country. So I had a guaranteed job. So my job was to, the officers would interview people and determine whether or not they can get a visitor visa into coming into the United States, which is actually really difficult to do. I don't know if you guys, like, it is really difficult. You have to show that you have ties to that country and that you're going to come back. So you have to show bank accounts showing that you have a lot of money in that country. You have to show that you have a job. You have to show that you have, like, something like an asset, like a house.
Wow.
You have to show that you have family there. I mean, it's a whole thing just to even visit the United States.
Crazy.
So once they got past the officers, then it would come to me and I would type in their visa. It would print out the sticker and I would stick it on the passport, and then they would come back and they would pick it up in the afternoon. So I did that in Japan, and I also did that in Trinidad and Tobago on my summers. But in Trinidad, which is funny because honestly, I was hungover a lot of the time that I was there because we could go to clubs. And my parents didn't care. They're like, as long as you woke up and go to work, and they would get there like at 7 a.m. That was like my parents. Like, you need to show up to work at least an hour ahead, you know? So, but I would just sit there all day and just input information into the computer. Well, one passport came across, and I thought, this looks a little strange. And so I'm staring at it. Like, in Trinidad, their emblem is like two cranes, and their beaks are kind of facing each other. And so it's like that.
Okay.
And this one, their beaks were facing the wrong way. And I thought, that's not right? And so I took it to the officer, and I said, I think this passport might be fake. And they were like, what? He had already gotten through all of his interviews with the officers. They had already granted, said he was getting a visa. So they brought in, so there's CIA in every embassy. And so they brought them in. They went into this room, and it was like this black light and everything. And it was a fake passport. Turns out the guy was actually wanted in the United States. And like, so they said, oh my God, this almost got through. They said, you found this, so do you want to be, like, present? Would you like to see this all go down? And I said, heck yeah, I'd like to see this all go down. And I was like 17 years old. So they said, you could be the one to call his name up where he thinks he's coming to get his visa, and you'll see us take him down. And I was like,
how old are you?
This is great. I was 17.
Man.
So they bring everybody into this big room, right? And there's like rows. It looks kind of like the DMV, right? And so there's rows, and then they call people up. So I knew the CIA officers that were sitting like 2 seats down from him. And so like I called his name. He came up, and they just swooped in on him and took him down. It was like one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. Then I got a letter from the President of the United States commending me for finding this fugitive.
Stop.
So
let's stop.
I literally have
catching criminals.
Hold on. Hold on.
So this is my first job, right? So I come to the States. When I graduate high school, and honestly, before I came, my dad sat me down. It was like literally the only time in my entire life he ever sat me down and had like a conversation about my future. We never talked about college. We never talked about like what you're going to be when you grow up. So like we just didn't have that. Like you were just expected to do it, you know, like in my family. That's how my parents did. And so he just was like, you have 2 choices. You can either stay here and work at the embassy and save some more money, or you can go to the States. But if you go to the States, you got to figure it out. If you want to go to college, figure it out. You need a place to stay, figure it out. And I was like,
Whoa.
all right, I'll do that. And he's like, you sure? And I was like, I have $3,500 like saved up. I thought I was rich. I was like, yeah, I got this. So I came to the States with $3,500 in my pocket. That's it. And had to figure it out. So I'm thinking, I got this great resume, right?
Yeah, did you just listen to that story?
I have on my resume, the only thing I have on my resume is that I worked for the U.S. Embassy overseas in 2 different countries. I have a letter from the President of the United States, and I am going to like Orange Julius, like trying to get a job. And number one, they thought it was fake. And like my you have to put down like who they should call to, to recommend. Like they're all like the ambassador of this country. And they're like, what is this? You realize what you are, I said, no, I would really like to work in retail. I would really like to, it's not above me. Like I want to work in retail. My very first job, I worked in the States. It was that I got the very first day that I got back because I had to find something. And I was at a sunglass kiosk at the mall, at the Art and Fair Mall. So those kiosks in the middle of the mall. And I would stand there. And it didn't occur to me at the time that when you're standing there as a woman, you can't leave.
No.
So men just come up to you and hit on you. And you have to stand there and just like. And the other thing was you had to stop people from stealing the sunglasses. So those were my 2 like big things that I had to do there. So that was, my first, I don't know if you would say real job, but job, normal job in the States was
What a story. What a story.
I was just going to say, man, like I remember vividly where I was and what I was doing at 17 years old. I was living in South Sacramento with my dad, going to a continuation high school. My hours of operation at that continuation high school was 9 to 12 because you only went to school for 3 hours a day. Meanwhile, Olivia is in the embassy, and she is getting letters from the president for stopping somebody that was wanted. I feel like if I had that job that you just described, I wouldn't really be like super looking for the detail oriented. I'm like, all right, let's go. But man, that's just a wild story.
The funny thing is I wasn't. Like, I never thought I was going to find it. It didn't even occur to me to look for a fake passport. But when you stare at passports all day long, you kind of notice things.
Man.
They're different. So,
so when you moved back to Sacramento, where did you stay?
Initially, I stayed with a friend of mine's grandmother. Ironically, my best friend in Trinidad and Tobago was moving to, her parents worked for BP Oil. So our American school that was there was pretty much all BP Oil kids.
Got it.
And then there was like some embassy kids, but that was it. So I had 16 people in my grade there. So she was one of them. She actually came and lived with me when her parents had to come back to Texas first and then to Folsom. And so they were staying with her grandparents while they were getting a house. It was kind of crazy because, and they kind of returned the favor that I could stay with them right when I came back because she was living with us when they came back to the States early. And it just ironically happened that there was her grandparents lived in Rosemont.
That's awesome.
And so, but we lived in this tiny house all together. So it was her grandparents. It was her parents. It was her and her brother in it, and her sister and me.
Oh my goodness!
And there were 3 bedrooms.
Oh my goodness!
So
I would have immediately started missing my time in Trinidad and Japan.
It was crazy, but I was never home. Like I always, from the point that I got here on, always had at least 2 jobs. I went to school nights and weekends. Like I was never home. And we quickly moved into an apartment. We were only there for like a couple months or so.
Okay.
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah.
And I spent the money that I had from the embassy to buy my very first car. It was a powder blue Ford Taurus, 1980.
Let's go.
That's great.
I
And
saw you.
I had never driven before. I didn't drive until I was
Oh.
19 because overseas you don't
Yeah.
drive. And so all of a sudden I got here and I was like, oh crap, I never took driver's ed or any of that stuff. I don't know how to drive. So her grandpa took me out a couple of times. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go take the test. I failed. I had to take it 3 times. And the third time, the woman was like, I'm just going to give this to you out of the goodness of my heart. I was a terrible driver.
Oh, that's great.
So.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little bit now. I want to know, I heard this part of the story, but I want to hear it from you again. So at what point did you bump into Ricky?
Ricky?
Because I believe it was at Zocalo's, correct?
Yes. So first, I actually ran into him at the Art and Fair Mall. I
Okay.
was working at Fredericks of Hollywood, and he came in with his girlfriend, who used to be my best friend. In high
Oh,
school.
wow.
Was that just like for the
Oh,
first time
wow.
for you? Was that the first time that you guys saw each other?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It was funny because when him and I were dating in freshman year of high school, she was my best friend, and I would actually come and stay with her on some summers when I came back to the States.
Wow.
And then I didn't hear from her.
Of course
anymore.
not.
This is back when you literally would get letters from someone, you
Yeah.
know, like she would always send me, because she was always, you know, homecoming queen
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, and all these proms and stuff. And so she would always send me photos of stuff. And then I stopped hearing from her. And then she had started dating Ricky.
Wow.
So he had come to do a return.
Not a return. No.
was
I'm
my-
sure they were there to purchase, but I'm sure I threw a wrench in it. But you know, it was interesting because like he came in and they were together. I hadn't seen either of them in, you know, forever. And so I remember going to my boss in the back and I said, you know how there's always that guy that you always think about, what if, you know, that's my guy. Like that's him.
Wow.
So he was always the one that I've, you know, thought about and stuff. And so he left and then he came back without her the next off season. And he asked me out on a date. And I said no. I said I didn't think my boyfriend would like that very much, was my exact words.
You didn't have a boyfriend?
I did have a boyfriend.
did? Okay.
Yeah. So, but which was a shame because, you know, I
course.
always had, you know, a torch for him, but I was in a relationship at that time. So then I didn't see him until I was at Zocalo's downtown. And so
how old were you then?
I was 24.
Oh, wow. So it's been
I
a
had
while.
not,
Yeah.
because I was in radio at that. I was working in radio at that time, so I wasn't at the mall. He couldn't find. He had gone back apparently to the mall and couldn't find me because I wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Were you still driving the Ford Taurus at age 24?
No, no. I had gone through a few cars at that point. But yeah, no, So yeah, I was working for Clear Channel Radio at that time, and so, but it was actually interesting timing because I had been with my ex for about 4.5 years. I had just moved in with him, and I had realized there wasn't anything wrong. It was just kind of like, I don't think this is my person I should marry. Like, there's not anything wrong with the relationship, but there's also no excitement, and you know, I feel like this isn't it for me.
Yeah.
You know, and so. I was there with my best friend, and so we had decided to move in together. And so we were literally there at the bar talking about, you know, moving in together. And then I went to the bathroom, and I guess Ricky was there. He was on a date. He says he wasn't on a date. He was on a date. And ironically, I don't know why he kept hooking up with girls from high school, but he was there on a date with somebody that he dated right after I left, who hated me because she liked Ricky. And so he was there with her. So he left the table and was standing there when I got out of the bathroom.
Oh my goodness.
So he saw a guy that he like played ball with, and so he was like pretending to talk to him when I came out. And so I said, you know, we're leaving right now. We're going to, what is it called, Lighthouse or whatever,
Okay.
on Alhambra. Anyways, we were headed over there, and I was like, you can come over and meet us if you want.
Limelight.
There you
that's
go.
it, yeah. So we went there. He showed up, and my friend at that point, because it was her birthday, she was getting fed a lot of shots. and she was gone.
Yeah.
And so I barely saw him for like 10 minutes before I needed to leave. And so we had to set up a lunch date, and that was it. He was only in town for like 2 more weeks, and then he left for the season. So he played baseball, and I didn't know that at the time. So he had become a baseball player. And so he would leave for the season. He would go to Florida for spring training. And then most of the time he would go to New York for the season. And so we kind of started seeing each other for about 2 weeks, and then he left, and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And then we just started seeing each other long distance. So I would fly there once a month and see him until he would come for the off season, and then he proposed the next off season.
Oh, wow.
So that was a year that we did that. And then when we got engaged, it was kind of like, you know, one of us has to give if we don't want this to be long distance for the rest of our lives. And obviously he has to go where his team is. And so I left my career, which was difficult because I had worked really hard to get to where I was in Clear Channel at that time. And I couldn't fathom not working. Like that was just something I hated not doing that. So I would work everywhere we went. In the States, in California. So I worked for Clear Channel Radio here. My job was to create additional revenue for the radio stations. So I would come up with a concept for it was KFBK, KSDE, V101, and Y92. And so you would come up with a concept that has to net the company at least $100,000. And it would be an event or a concert or whatever it is, and then create sales packages, go to the sales force, have them sell it to their sponsors, and then implement the event. And so that was my job. It was just coming up with additional revenue. Which I think helps set me up for flipping and for investing and that kind of stuff, because I just had to create things out of thin air, you know. So when I left, I went to New York because that's where he was at the time, and I pitched it to the New York office, and I said, you guys don't have a non-traditional revenue division, and I was just part of that new division in California. Can I come here and set that up for you guys? I'm only here for the season. I'll get you going, and then I'll help you find somebody to replace me to run the program. And so they agreed. And so I came in and I started that division in New York as a job there. And then as soon as the season ended, I left with him. And then I thought, well, what can I do during the time of spring training, you know, in the off season? So I was coming down the elevator at Clear Channel in New York, and I saw a sign that was looking for tax preparers. And so I thought, tax season coincides with spring training. We go to spring training in Florida. Florida doesn't have state taxes; they only have federal. So what I would do is I would go to California, take my courses for that year, and then I would go do taxes in Florida during the season. So when I started in Florida, they had no openings left except for one office. And it was in the worst part of town. Oh, no. And so I didn't know it at the time, but they had actually made a bet of how long I was going to last at this place.
That's hilarious.
Because, I mean, it was really a rough part of town.
Yeah.
And here I show up in, like, my little Mercedes. I had on this, like, suit. Like, I was, like, thinking, you know, this is great. And I walk up, and they're like, oh, my God, this chick. So they actually had, like, vans that would come up and, like, sell Social Securities and stuff, like, in the grocery store next to it. I mean, it was crazy. Everybody was either an ITIN. They were getting assistance, you know, and so it was a lot. But I loved it. Like, I loved it because everybody was interesting. Like, and there's something about doing people's taxes. We hold, like, our finances so close to the vest, right? You don't talk about it. Like, but it's the only time that you do is with a tax professional, because you kind of have to. We see how much you make. You have to talk to me about your kid's situation, you know? So I heard about everybody's baby daddy. I heard about, because, like, whoever has the kid for more than 6 months can claim him and get the deductions, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was insane there. I had a guy pee on the chair while I was doing his taxes because they'd come in like drunk. They'd come in. But it was so entertaining. We had a Metro PCS next door to us that got held up so many times that they had a special knock that we knew if that knock happened to call the police because they were getting held up again. One guy was upset because he came in to pick up his check and his check wasn't there because he was claiming somebody's kids that he wasn't supposed to be claiming. So the IRS was holding up his check. So he goes, puts a ski mask on, goes next door and holds it up.
Oh, my word.
So the police come in and they're like, do you have any information? I said, yeah. What do you want? So security number, his address, his like birthday. I have it all, you know, like it was crazy. So
This is in Florida?
This was in Florida. So I ended up managing that office. And I didn't find out until I became the manager that they had a bet on how long that I would last in this office. The longest was
Who
2.5 weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that was the
No one
longest?
won. I won. Because that was the longest. And I was there for years.
That's
until,
crazy.
Until Ricky became a free agent and we went to Japan.
Man.
So how crazy is that, the story of all of those stops, and now you're going back to Japan?
It's so funny because we were like the 5th generation of my family to go to Japan, all for different reasons. The first 2 generations were missionaries. My dad went for diplomat, and we were going for baseball. And so it was just really interesting. He became a free agent and, he got offers in the States to stay. But Japan, when they offer, it's guaranteed money. Where in the States, it's if you get hurt, you're out. They could send you up and down. Your amount can change. So you're only getting paid a certain amount if you're in the show, with Japan, it was guaranteed, and they were paying like about more than 2 times league minimum to go there.
Got it.
So it was, that was kind of a no-brainer to go there. So, and it was kind of neat too because I had always wanted to go back, and this time it was Tokyo before we were in Osaka. So, so that was kind of neat. They did it was a big deal to them that my family was Japanese and that I spoke some of the language and stuff. So they did this big, news articles and stuff, and we were going over there about that.
That's incredible.
They had one where we framed it in our house. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's a newspaper picture on the front page, and it's Ricky with his hat off and bending down on the mound. And it says in the caption, wife teaches, husband about respect in Japan.
That's amazing.
But actually, all he was doing was he had wiped the sweat off of his brow, and that's why he was looking down with this thing. But that's
I like what they said.
They spun it, but that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. How long was that stint out there? That
so we were there
version
for
of it?
a year, because he did get hurt.
Shoulder.
That was actually Tommy John. So
he was a left-hand pitcher?
He was a left-handed pitcher.
Oh,
So we came back for Tommy John. So I had always said to him, and also I worked in Japan too, so I had to go and petition the Japanese government. So we got there, and I went to the government offices and I petitioned to be able to work, and they allowed me to. So I taught English when I lived there. But so I always told him, whenever you're done playing, like, I got you. Like, I want to go back to work. I don't know what I want to do yet, but I got it, And so, because it's always kind of one of those things when you're playing ball, there's a lot of superstitions that go along with playing. And one of those is that you don't think about what you're going to do after ball because if your mind is there, your mind is not in the game,
Okay.
And so it's kind of one of some guys did, and would set themselves up for after the season, but a lot of them didn't. And that's partly why is because it's such a mindset thing, especially baseball.
That makes sense, but at the same time, you even implying that to him had to have been refreshing for him because I don't have to, not that I don't have to worry about it afterwards, but that doesn't have to be a stressor at all. I can concentrate on my craft and do it. That's amazing.
Yeah, to both of your points, I would imagine being an athlete, you want to eliminate any and all distractions because you have to have your head locked. Shout out to you for being a badass woman because you sacrificed for Ricky and vice versa. I mean, you see like, yeah, I'm sure you're gonna tell more of the story, but man, that's just like just hearing all of that and what comes with that. Because you're not somebody that strikes me as like I'm just gonna, just stay here and not do much. I mean,
She pushed for a job every place that she went and took. There's no for an answer.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
You definitely carry. You embody the entrepreneurial spirit. You know what I mean? So, man, a lot of sacrifices.
It was, and that's what a marriage is. Like there's times in a marriage where one person, needs more support than the other. And a lot of times it happens with kids too, and it happened with us also with kids, like if you want one person to sacrifice to be with the kids and the other person, pick it up in the income
for sure
section. So, I mean, that's what it's about, so my point was I'm going to leave my career and come with you and I'll figure it out, side stuff that I can do and stuff in the meantime. But once you're stopped playing, then I'm going to pick it up. And then you support me, while you figure out what you want to do next in your next chapter.
Chris obviously talked about right at the beginning of this, the confidence that you have. The fact that you had no clue what it was going to be, but you're like, you do this, afterwards I got you, and not knowing what the next step is, that's confidence to the fullest. That's impressive.
I call that gangster shit.
Yeah, I love it.
That's some gangster shit.
I'm impressed.
I always tell Maddie, even if real estate for whatever reason fizzles out, I don't think it will, but you never know. I was like, we're always going to do something together and we'll always figure it out. Like, and that's kind of our motto in everything that we do.
Yes.
We always figure it out. There's no reason stressing about stuff and getting I would be stressed all day, every day if I let things bother me. Like the stuff that I have to deal with on a daily basis is insane. But it doesn't matter. Like we always figure it out. Yeah. So why let that get in the way of your stress and your health and your happiness,
Yeah.
There's so much to be said about your journey. Like if you look at life as a book, the early on chapters did prepare you for the posture that you carry now. You know what I mean? Like hearing all those stories, it's like, why would you trip out at this stage knowing that you've been prepared for this, right? You've been prepared for all the different things life threw at you and how you responded to that. And also just, I know that you mentioned, you had some fun at some clubs, but let's just be honest, the experiences that you have had in your early life made you extremely mature, probably a lot more mature quicker, right? And if you look back at like just, same thing with you know what I mean? Like I listened to Rene's stories, like it's a lot, but it definitely gives you that posture to prepare you for the bigger things that come down the road in life. And now you're responding to those things differently. So it's like there's benefits in getting thrown into some crazy ass shit at a younger age, right? Because
no doubt.
Now that when we get older, you're able to just react a lot differently.
Yeah. I think, it's kind of straight. Being able to go clubbing at such a young age, it got all out of my system. Like when I came to the States, I was only 18 years old. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't go to a club? I'm not old enough to drink.
Yeah.
Like I've been drinking for years. But it actually was helpful because I was like, all right, if I can't go to a club, I'm just going to work all the time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pour myself into work and going to school.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to a single, like my friends were all going to like frat parties and like all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time there.
That's awesome.
I was over it, and so I didn't step foot in another club or anything like that until I was 21, and that was for work. I started working for a radio station.
Yeah.
And I needed to go to the clubs for that, but it did help because I got all that out of my system. I didn't really, need it. And even then, just because it wasn't something that you were doing secretively, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Like when you're allowed to drink and allowed to do things, you just do them more responsibly because we weren't hiding anything. None of my friends did drugs. No one did. Like weed, some, but like nothing, hardcore. We didn't have any of that pressure that you have in the States, I feel.
Interesting.
So I just kind of skipped all of that.
Yeah.
And I tell my daughter all the time, and I'm like, don't ever feel pressured by anyone to do anything, like that doesn't make you a cooler person, or make you fit in with them. Like you could still hang out with people doing whatever they want to do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't influence you or your decisions or your actions.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was interesting. Also, I didn't have anything to fall back on, in the States. So like usually people hear so often, like all my friends would be like, oh, I'm back living with my parents. Or like, I didn't have that option. My parents were overseas. Like, that's it. Like, it's just me or nothing, So I didn't have anybody to fall back on.
Amazing.
Now, if I called my parents and I asked them for help, would they help me? Yeah. Of course. But I wouldn't because that would mean that I failed.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want to make that phone call. So I never did, it just wasn't even an option, and when it's not an option, you just kind of approach things differently. There is no option of failure, like, because that's it,
The pressure, it makes diamonds, right?
Yeah, and I didn't really feel pressure all the time. I just had confidence that things were if I was a hard worker, if I applied myself, everything would be fine.
Yeah.
It would work out. And it did, like there weren't, I'm not going to say that my life was daisies by any means. There was some hard times, but you get through it,
That's the mindset that we want, the people we care about to have. I mean, it's just a mindset because there was pressure. You just looked at it different, So that's amazing. That's what I want for my kids. And speaking of kids, where were you when you had your first kid? Like, I want to get that kind of timeline in my head, So
that was interesting too. So Ricky, when we got back from Japan, so that was 2009.
Okay.
We were in Japan for 2009. So we came back on, actually, our flight back was September 11th, 2009.
No.
I was like, of course we're on a plane on September 11th. Obviously, 8 years later, but still, I'm sure it was a cheap flight that day.
I know.
But so when we got back, we knew he was going to be out for a year because when you have Tommy John surgery, you have actually 2 casts. They take a ligament from one arm and they put it.
Oh my goodness, I actually didn't know that.
Oh, I mean, it's extreme. So you're out for at least a season. And so I thought this is a good time for me to get pregnant. And so I thought, well, I'm going to start my career and I'm going to get pregnant. And we actually had to, because we didn't know if he was going to be going back to Japan. I actually had to tell the Japanese teams that I would be willing to have a baby in Japan if we were to go back. And I agreed. My mom was born and raised in Japan. Her birth certificate is a parcel. It's like a package, like what you get from UPS. That's her birth certificate.
That's hilarious.
That's great.
Because you're not a Japanese citizen.
Yeah.
They don't allow dual citizenship.
Yeah.
So even though you're born there, you're not a citizen.
Wow.
So anyways, I still have her parcel. So I had to agree to have the baby there if we were back by the time that the baby was due. And so I did. But right before we left for Japan, we had been looking for a house. And so I thought looking at houses was so fun. And so I thought, you know what, that was fun. I liked looking at houses. Maybe I'll become a real estate agent. And my Ricky's aunt was a broker. She owns a brokerage out of Dixon. And so I thought, well, I can go, do an internship with her and take my courses and then become an agent. So I went to the summer classes to become a real estate agent at Sac City.
Got it.
I was super pregnant at the time. At the end of that, I had Leah, my daughter, and then I sat for the exam a couple of months after that and became an agent. So Ricky left for the season, and I had an infant and had just started real estate. So I went to my sister and I said, I need your help as a nanny until I can, figure out until Ricky can come back and stuff. And so she came and worked for me. My first year, I did 5 deals.
Where was your license at?
Barrett Lever Realty, which is out of Dixon.
Got it.
Which is Ricky's aunt's company.
Okay.
So
Still exists?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
She does a big book business out that way. She's really well known.
Huh.
So I became an agent. It was like, I was like, how am I going to do? I bought a billboard on Jefferson Boulevard.
Hey, there's nothing. Hey, this honestly, I know that times have changed, but when my mom had her billboard that said Tracy sells Laguna, it was mind-boggling how much business she got from
That's
it.
awesome.
She ended up getting a second billboard, and I remember I was in junior high at the time, and I used to get made fun of constantly.
God.
I won't say it on the podcast, but they would replace the word sells with a different word,
Oh,
and you know how kids are.
Well, and your mom's beautiful too.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
But yeah, you had a billboard off of Jefferson.
Yeah.
Times
I
have
did.
changed.
They made me take it down. I did not know that as an agent, you're not allowed to have a billboard. You can't have larger than a for sale sign, and it has to be a specific house that you are advertising.
Really?
Every municipality has different rules, but in West Sac and almost all of them around here, it's the same thing. That's why you don't see agents typically having billboards.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So your license is in Dixon.
My license is in Dixon.
You do 5 deals, which I think 5 deals your first year is actually not bad at all.
Honestly, I thought maybe I'll get like 1 or 2 under my belt before Ricky starts playing again, and then I could actually do it when he's done playing was my goal. And then it was like, maybe I'll do like 1 a year. But my last deal of the year was my first flip. That's when everything changed. So
But when you say your first flip, was it an investor that you were working with and you were going to help?
No, I bought it.
You bought it.
So, but what happened was I was doing floor time in Dixon where no one ever came in, but there was a guy who was looking for a flip in Dixon, and he was looking for my aunt. But my last name being Barrett, he thought I was the broker. And I said, I am not. You're looking for Linda. However, if you are looking for anything in Sacramento, I'm your girl. Tell me what it is you're looking for, and let me see if I could find something for you. So he told me. I started searching, and I found this really great property on auction, at auction.com. And so
Wait, how old were you at this time?
30.
Okay.
30. I had Leah right when I was 30. And I started real estate right at 30. So I checked it out. I've got a contractor over there. I ran comps. Like it was a great property. It was on the Morgan Creek Golf Community, and it was like on the golf course, right? And the numbers worked out. I went back to him and I said, okay, bidding is in an hour. I need your proof of funds, I need to know where you want me to stop. And he turned out not to be legitimate. Couldn't show me a proof of funds, couldn't anything. So
real quick, just to stop, I wanted to say that for most people, their first year in real estate, taking on something like that is pretty wild. Because I remember my first year in real estate, and I'm a very confident person, but just working that new muscle for the first time. I mean, my first closing was my buddy's father who just called me to help, I need to buy a house.
Yeah.
Right. But like going on to auction.com and running numbers. I mean, how did you pick the contractor? Like to me, this all sounds intimidating, but it also goes with your story, with your lineage of I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to make it happen. Let's go. So I want to hear the rest of it.
the contractor called me off of the billboard.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that funny? I didn't get any deals out of the dang billboard, but I did get a call from my contractor. So yeah, that's how I got him. But anyways, I was upset because I didn't have any other clients. I had done all of this work, and figured out this was a great flip.
Yeah.
And so I went to my husband. He was playing video games at the time. And I said, hey, listen, like, this is a great deal.
Yeah.
And I have no one else to sell this to. And I kind of half jokingly was like, what if we bought it? And he was like, yeah, whatever. Like he wasn't really paying attention to me. So I
Did
went.
you guys own a house yet? Okay, you
Yeah, we owned our personal home.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went on and I bid and we got it. And so now I came back over and I was like, we got it. And he's like, we got what?
What?
I'm like, the house. You
He
know?
probably didn't really even hear it. He's
He's
still
like,
playing.
What?
How are we gonna? Hey, Ricky, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry that Olivia's busting you out talking about you're playing video games.
Hey, he was hurt at the time. He had a cast on. There was nothing really he could be doing at the
How
time.
did you pay for this?
So with the money that he had made.
Amazing.
Damn. So Ricky
Amazing.
was just like, so now he's putting up all that money. So you buy the property.
Yeah. And see, again, this, like the things in a marriage complement each other, like that was our first flip. If we hadn't had that money, we couldn't have done it, So that's one of the hardest things of getting into flipping is to actually have that first seed money to do it. So, so we got the property. I was super excited. Like there was no doubt in my mind that this was a good property and I had no fear, which is weird, right? Until I took Ricky out there, and his parents were coming to see it too. And I had Leah, our little baby, with us, and I was like excited to show it to him. We got there, he walks in, and his face just fell, and he was like, "How much money did you spend on this? Like, this is like all of our savings on this house." And I'm like, "Yeah, isn't it great? I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna, like this is being ripped out, and I'm gonna." And he was like, "Oh my God," And then it was the first time I felt doubt. I was like, "Wait, don't you see what I see? Like this is gonna be amazing, And he called his parents and told him not to come. And I was like, "Oh God, did I just put all of like our family in danger by doing this?" And so then I got a little nervous, but I had already bought it, so we pushed through, and in the end, he wanted to move into it. So I'm like, "You're not allowed at any of the properties anymore because you need a vision of it."
Well, it's not like at this time you or Ricky had ever even flipped a home before. That's number one. Number two, when you said that about Ricky's expression, it immediately took me back to when you and I first met.
Yeah, everybody is that way.
And I'm like, you're tripping. You're tripping. And really it was just a lack of me seeing the vision, right? Because you only know what you know, right? So that's a very unique part of the story. So
well, it is, and that's a normal thing too. And I had to realize that is the normal thing that happens when people see these houses that are in complete disrepair. It's hard for them to see it in the end. In my eyes, I can't explain it. It's kind of strange. It's kind of like I'm painting in my head, and I could see everything the way that it will be when I'm done with it. I could see walls gone. I could see things, and I could just see it in my head. And it didn't occur to me that other people can't see that, so I can't visualize that with people.
At that point, you hadn't done it before, though.
No.
Where do you think that came from?
idea.
So hold
that
on.
was it.
1 second.
Wow.
We're going to take a quick 3-minute break.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we're back, and I want to kind of just finish up the flip, right? So now you had mentioned that, at first Ricky was very apprehensive, called off his family from coming to see it, but you had the vision, and at the end, he loved it so much he wanted to move in. So tell us, did you make any good money on this flip? So what did that look like? Do you remember the numbers at all?
I do. And it was back before we had to take, you didn't have to, but the 90-day rule came about. And so I actually got that flip done in like a month and a half.
Whoa.
And so that one I made $35,000 off of, which back then was really good. This was back in 2011. And so I bought my car off of that. And then I started to do multiple houses after that. Ricky left to go play. One of them was down the street from me. So the second flip I ever did was literally down the street. There's like these cluster homes from my house. And so I had switched contractors because I had a little issue with the first one. And it was a friend of the family. And he said he was giving me a friends of the family discount. So I'm like, oh, this is great. So he says, go pick out your flooring. So I went to Flooring Liquidators and I picked out my flooring, and there's this big sign on there that says, ask us about installation. And I turned to Maddie and I said, I'm going to see how good this friends and family discount is. Watch this. So I said, hey, out of curiosity, how much is it to install? And he said, $2.50 a square foot. And I said, can you excuse me for a second? I need to make a phone call. And I went outside and I got his voicemail, the contractor, and I laid him out. And I fired him from the job because he was charging me $5 a square foot.
Oh.
Which is not only double, let alone the friends and family discount. So I fired him. He was supposed to start the next day. And then I went, crap, what am I going to do? You know, so I called Maddie's husband. He came and I painted the house together with him. We landscaped the backyard together. I hired Flooring Liquidators for the flooring. And I did countertops through LNU. And I just got it done with just subs.
Well, it sounds like this particular flip was more of like
It was a lipstick
job. You weren't taking down walls and doing like structural stuff.
Back in the day, in 2011, that's really all there was. It was just a bunch of lipstick. What I refer to as lipstick is, if I'm just doing flooring, paint, countertops, landscaping, that stuff is so easy.
Yeah.
In fact, even if I just was doing a kitchen, bathrooms, flooring, paint, landscaping, that's super easy.
Yeah.
Now I do a lot of structural stuff. It's, tearing down walls and redoing floor plans and things like that because you had to. Back then, the flips were a dime a dozen. We were just writing as many offers as we could in a day, hoping that one of them would get chosen, because it was so competitive, which it still is. But there were so many houses. So you would just write offers all day long and just hope that they get in. And it was a standard you would get between $25,000 and $35,000 per house. But also your budget was $30,000. I could do any house for $30,000 back in the day. Now, just even your most basic of jobs is at least $50,000. Usually we're at least 70 on something that's even just really easy. But when I'm starting to move walls and I'm doing all that, it's 100 plus.
Of course.
What was the one we did together was like 250,000 was our budget.
Yep.
I've done them up to
250,000 budget.
I did
I think I
one-
borrowed some of your money for that, by the way.
I remember. You
See,
did.
there was a time when the market was so damn good that I can, not only call my hard money lender, but now I'm short like 50 grand. I'm like, hey, Rene, I need to borrow 50 grand from you, but you'll make like 8 grand off of it. Renee's like, all right, come pick it up.
Pick it up. Is that what we did?
You gave me a check. No, it was a wire.
It's a wire.
You got paid back.
That's right. No doubt. It was a good investment.
and made money off
That's
of it.
right.
So
That's what-
a couple things that I just want to jump in real quick. So obviously that was the start of it all, right? That story. And what it sounded like was you knew right away after the flooring stuff and the family friends discount and the first contractor you worked with, you probably at that point were putting all the pieces together that, you know what, I can probably run a lot of this stuff and manage a lot of this stuff on my own. Now I just need to keep on building my relationships with different vendors, right?
And I learned I get all the material myself. I don't ever include material in my budgets with the contractors because I don't want to be charged an extra 15% or whatever.
Yep.
I want to know exactly how much my material is. So I buy all my material myself. I pick it out myself. Also because we know what buyers are looking for in the area, and I like to have things be unique and have a design element to it. Even the low-end stuff, I think should have some design features, which you can do without blowing your budget.
Yep.
It's really minimal things can make a huge difference. Like I call the hardware on a cabinets, I call it the jewelry because that's what it is. You can have very plain cabinets, you can get away with painting some cabinets, but you put some nice hardware on it and it really changes the look of the kitchen. So I started doing that and I started dealing directly with each subcontractor of every part. I mean, everybody always jokes I have a guy for everything. And I don't just have a guy, I have usually at least 2 in every field. I have 2 fabricators. I have 4 painters. I have, 2 flooring guys. I have 3. I have a hardwood guy. I have one that does all of my laminate. And I have one that does my carpet, I have high-end guys, low-end guys, just kind of depending on the job. I have framers, foundation guys, I met my paver yesterday. He's specific to paving. I have a different concrete guy. Like, everything is different, but my theory on that is that person is an expert in that specific field.
Love it.
So if you do cabinets, and that's what you do all day, every day is cabinets, you know exactly how much your cost is, and you know exactly how long it's going to take you to do it, and your quality is the same. And that's why I do that. When you have contractors, they can do a lot of things, but they're not experts in every single field. It's just like us. We could do commercial real estate. Are we as good at commercial as we are at residential? Probably not. Like, we can do property management. Are we as good at that as we are? Like, so that you have your expertise, and then you have things that you can do and that you're decent at. So I just like to use experts in everything. It goes faster, but it's a lot of time on my part. So I have spreadsheets for everything. I have spreadsheets for my budget, and I have spreadsheets for my time, and it is very tight. And I have the guys going from one job to the next job to the next job. And they know, if you tell me you're going to take 2 days, you're taking 2 days. There are certain ones that I will buffer because sometimes there's things that happen, and so I'll just leave a day, but I will never tell them I left a day. They don't know where the buffers are, but there are buffers in there. And same thing with budget. Like, you should know your numbers. Unless I do something to change it, my numbers should never change, and they don't. The guys that I've worked with for many years, and they know me and know that I am standing there with a check when they're done. I always appreciate them. I appreciate their work, and I appreciate their time. In return, they are always available for me.
Wow.
Always.
And
they
I
will
will
put me in front of every job.
Speak from experience, because I've done at least 3 flips with you where I've hired you to be a project manager because it was above my pay grade, and the flips were so complex that I wasn't going to risk, getting involved with it without consulting you. So kudos to you. But I will say, a lot of these subs that I use, there's some that I have that you probably don't even know of, and vice versa. But they're a lot more intimidated of Olivia than me. I'm like the guy that I'm bringing them lunch, and I'm like, hey guys, and I've seen Olivia in action, and I'm like, damn, all right, okay. Like, she's just, you gotta get shit done, because like the 2 areas that I feel I was burned in, and a lot of people are burned in, is money and time. Right? They ended up in some way they ended up paying thousands and thousands of dollars more than they should have, and it took a lot longer. And I'm not trying to like put her under the bus here, but I just witnessed, and she did a phenomenal job, okay? But I just witnessed from start to finish, Kendra got a new listing, and she took on what you have been doing for years, right? And I stayed out of it. I just kind of watched. But then I would ask, like, how's Colin say going? The property. Oh, he said he was going to be here, but now he's not going to be here till next week. And the thing I know about Kendra, she's the sweetest, and she's not going to like hold your feet to the fire. But just observing this of how long it took, I would probably say that it took approximately 2 months to do what potentially could have gotten done, right? Now, in her case, the seller wasn't like, we need to put this house on the market in 5 days, but it was just still time is money, right? And unless you have done it, now this was one of the first properties that she has, outside of maybe her own property in the past, taken on for a client. But from me, and a lot of this I learned from you, is, look, we got 3 weeks to get this shit done. I'm going to be the one that picks out all the material because I love doing that. And you guys are going to be on the job site when you say you're going to be on the job site, and I'm going to manage you. And I know that you take great pride in that.
I do. And I think one of the things that I do in terms of respect for them, is I don't make them write me budgets out, or an invoice out or any of that kind of stuff. To me, when I go and I meet them at the property, we walk the property, and then I say, how much and how much time do you need? And then I text them and I say, you said that it was going to be $6,000. We're starting on this day. It's going to take you 2 days. And then I text that to them, and they text me back, yes. To me, that is a binding
That's a contract.
Yep.
And that's it. You don't have to write me up anything. I'm not going to bug you to do any, because a lot of people, I've learned with the contractors, they are horrible when it comes to paperwork.
Yeah.
They are horrible.
Yeah.
And they hate trying to collect on money. Collecting on money is taking away time from them doing their actual job. And so I don't make them do any of that. In fact, the ones that have to have anything written up, I do it for them. I have their templates, and I have my assistant write up anything if they need it for someone.
That's awesome.
You know, I'm like, do you need it? Okay, cool. I'll put it on paperwork for you, and I'll help you out. And then I will stand there with the check in the end too, so you don't have to come after me and ask me for anything. I'll even come meet you and give it to you. And I make sure your material is ordered, either there or it's ready for you at will call to pick up, so that they know it's like, I'm not going to waste your time, and don't waste mine. I will tell you, one of the things that's hard starting is being a woman. Like, it is just it's a male dominant industry. Construction is. And it's actually funny because I met a contractor for the first time yesterday that I've never worked with before. He does paving. And so my partner is the one who, this is his contact. And I said, I'll go meet him at the property. And he said, you don't see many women.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you don't. He was like,
man.
do you get, a hard time with it? And I said, not now. I did in the beginning.
Yeah.
I had to prove myself more than others, I feel. But my strategy was I always knew the answer to a question I was asking. And it's kind of my test, with that contractor to see if they're going to bullshit with me or not. I won't tell them what somebody else gave me a bid. You have to give me a blind bid. I'm not going to just be like, hey, this guy said it was going to be 10 grand, so that you can come in and tell me it's going to be 9,500. I want your real bid, And if you get it, you get all of my business. You get all or you get nothing, And so it just kind of, and the ones that don't play around in the beginning, it's not necessarily the lowest price one either, because I want quality work too, So I don't just pick the smallest one, and I will not accept a change order unless I change something.
Yes.
So it's just know that that's going to be your price in the end, and know that you're going to be available. So I schedule and they do so much work for me that they usually don't have to have other people that they work with, and I refer them to all of my clients too.
Yeah.
And then now I have a second portion of my business, which is, preparing houses for sale. So I go in and determine that I don't own those properties. I just come in and say, if I were to, like I just did one where I did countertops, I did flooring, and I did some touch-up paint. I did that all for $5,000. I got $25,000 more on the sales price because of $5,000 that we spent. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You made $5,000, or that was?
We spent $5,000 and made $25,000.
That's wild.
So, but there's things like that make sense, especially if you can identify when you walk into somebody's house and you say, that countertop is an eyesore. Everything else looks great, but like this right here is like people, and what people think things cost versus what they actually do is night and day. Like, and so if I could just do that up front, I can get it on the front end, and it'll make sense.
And we're still riding this wave right now, despite what has happened in the market, where inventory is really low, and I'm still seeing a pretty good amount of demand from buyers.
Right.
I have a past client that has 4 properties. She's now lives in North Carolina. Now she wants to offload all of them. So she's doing one at a time. And I did that exact same thing for a property of hers in Elk Grove, where we just did all new paint, all new flooring. Didn't touch any cabinets or countertops, paint, flooring, landscape. I think she spent like $7 or $8 grand. And she was able to get multiple offers, sold it slightly above list price. And if she would have put that property on the market, she would have sold it for $30,000 to $40,000 less than that easily. So,
and some people just wouldn't have even written an offer, because for them it's overwhelming. They don't know where to go or what to do or things. If I can solve it before I even hit the market, then great. Because if not, that's going to be my negative. I'm going to hear from every single person who comes through the house, and then there's going to be somebody who's willing to take the house despite this eyesore, but they're going to value that deficiency at a much higher amount than if I
Big
just
time.
I just fixed it. And usually I'm in and out within 2 weeks. Is I stage all the houses for free. I also own all of my staging. I
wow.
do that for free as part of my listing package.
Yeah.
And I pay for all of the repairs up front and I bill it to escrow. I don't charge anything for it. No project management fee, no interest, no nothing.
How can you say
So
no?
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's like, but when I go up against other agents, I'm going to win
Yeah.
because I am offering things that they, won't or can't offer. It's a lot of money. I mean, all my staging, at least $100,000 worth of staging I have, and I have to pay for the storage units, plural storage units, and I get the U-Hauls. I was just destaging yesterday. I'm going to destage again tomorrow, so, and we do it ourselves.
Yeah.
That's, I joke that's our health package.
Yeah. I love it.
How many want to transition real quick? So I also want to talk just a little bit of like just what your team looks like and all that fun stuff. But approximately, since you did your very first flip at the age of 30, how many flips do you think you have under your belt?
I'd say probably around 130. Some of them
Wow.
aren't, and then there's also the ones that aren't like flips. They're just like
The client
getting the house prepared for
yeah.
sale.
Wow.
That's kind of a different category of
Of,
it.
of the 130, how many of them were flips that you did for investors versus flips that were just completely
The majority I did for investors. So this is so kind of the way that it went. So initially I was just doing them for myself.
Yep.
And then I met a client at an open house of mine, beginning like at the very beginning of 2012. So the beginning of my second year. And I was talking to him. He was interested in the property as a flip. And I said, oh, I flipped too. Like, you want me to see if I could find you anything else? And he was like, yeah. So I started finding him flips and flipping for myself. But then he had a lot more money than I did. So he could do a lot more than I could. And then that's when THR came into our area. Blackstone was purchasing houses under the name THR. And so I noticed that every single one of my listings they were writing offers on. And it was always cash, it was always fast close, and they were always competitive offers, which was weird, right, being cash. So I went to the agent who was representing them directly, and I said, hey, listen, I noticed you are writing offers on all of my flips and listings. What if I were to go to you the second I purchase a flip, before I've even done the work, you tell me exactly because I noticed they were making changes to them after we flipped them, because they all had to meet this exact criteria of color scheme and like what they were doing. And so I said, what if you tell me your criteria, I make it exactly to your criteria. We get into contract as soon as we own the property.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the deal, we're done with construction, you close within a week. And he said, absolutely. So I started to do that. We got into contract the second we purchased the house. I went to them, I negotiated the resale. I said, you know what the house is going to look like, the quality in the end. So we just started selling directly to them. Sold them, I think, 28 houses that way. Just like going and going. And it wasn't until they started to change their, towards the end, they kind of changed their platform a bit, and we had to back off and start selling them normally again. Because they were kind of pulling back on what they were buying and not being as generous in their purchase price. I'll just say that. So that's kind of, but it was a great run.
Yes.
So that was for a client of mine who is now my partner in the venue. So I've known him forever. Also, on
Same
my very
gentleman that I
first,
know.
yes. Also on my very first flip, the escrow officer, who when I was signing, she said, "Hey, just so that you know, I also flip. So if you have any that you don't need, let me know because I would love to do it." So I started finding her property as well. So she never saw the property. So it was kind of different than him because he would do all his own construction. But with her, she was an escrow officer all day long.
Yeah.
And so I said, and it's in Sacramento, she's out of Vacaville. And so I said, listen, I'm going to treat this as if this is my own house, and my own flip. And so I ran the crews for her. I did. So she never saw the house. She now, fast forward, has retired from escrow and is now on my team. She's been an agent on my team for like 5 years.
I never knew that was.
That's how I met Becky.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I call her the legend because you talk about somebody who doesn't talk about themselves and is like incredibly humble. That woman has built the most incredible portfolio, not just flipping, which she's been flipping longer than I have. She runs all of her projects out of Vacaville now, and even in Sacramento now. Usually I handle the ones in Sacramento still for her, but she primarily does in Solano County. She has, I think, over 22 rentals. She's incredible. She is just, we call her the legend in our on our team because I talk about her all the time, but nobody has ever usually they haven't met her because there. So I'm like, you're a legend, you just don't know it.
That's amazing.
But she's great. So I started flipping for her, and then she introduced me to another flipper who I started flipping for him. Also, he never saw a single house. His wife now is on my team.
Who's that?
That's Janine.
Okay.
And so I taught her how to do some of the project management too. So she handles some of the projects herself now. And then, so I started doing volume all of a sudden. So the first year I had 5 deals. The second year I did 33. And then the next year I was at 50. And then 60 as a solo agent. I was a mom of 2. So I had my son in 2014 when I was doing, I think I did 50 or 60 that year, by myself. It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was gone all the time. I was working so much, and the success was great. I was doing great, but I really wanted to be with my kids more. And so I'm like, I got to figure out a better life-work balance. So that's when I decided I needed to have a team. And so Tammy was my first. She is Ricky's cousin.
Now, was Maddie already with you?
Maddie's been with me from the beginning because she started off as my nanny.
So I'll just say, technically, that's a lot more than what some agents have because she was the one that was doing was she helping you prep offers and doing stuff like that, or what was Maddie?
No, she kind of has a different way of she does all the back end stuff. So TC transaction coordination work. But she writes my offers. So I just dictate to her what it is, and then so she does it, she sends it off. Between every appointment to this day, I call her and she reads me my emails and I dictate back so that it's me responding, but I could do 2 things at once.
Shout out to Maddie.
That's awesome.
Absolutely amazing. There is no way I could do anything close to the volume I do without her. So now, our highest year was 138 houses in a year.
Impressive.
She handles all of it. We do not have a separate person for anything. It is all Maddie.
Incredible.
So then Tammy is now the first agent on your team.
Yeah, so she is an agent. And then Becky's daughter actually was my second.
Okay.
And she now lives in the Bay Area, and she works for a tech company, has great benefits and stuff. She will eventually come back and be an agent again, but she's doing that now, but she was an amazing agent.
Yeah.
And then Becky, Janine, who is, she was a nurse, and she left nursing to join my team and become an agent. Ildy was an agent as a solo agent for about 6 months before she joined my team. And then Lindsay Lindsay, I know because she was my brother-in-law's ex-girlfriend.
And she lives in the Clark. She's in the Clarksburg area, right? Or that's where she's from.
So everybody on the team kind of has a specialty. So she is our Delta queen. She knows everything about the Delta. She knows soil. Her family has vineyards and wineries and all of that. She knows everything about farming and all of that. So she handles all of that area. She also has flipped. I taught her to flip. Ildi has rentals and has also done many of the upgrades for sales. Everyone on the team has done investments, everyone. That's kind of my goal with it. I want everyone on the team to have not just a good real estate career, but also to be able to build something that you can retire off of.
I was just going to say, like, the finish line as you're saying this to me, and like, for me personally, the last 2 years has been very slow, and it's been humbling. But ultimately, the finish line is how many properties can we own? How many properties can we put under our belt?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's strategies to that too. Some of the girls have self-directed IRAs so that you could purchase real estate tax-free. That's really cool, especially if you can flip. If you can get your self-directed IRA to a point to where you could purchase properties through it, I mean, you just make hand over fist because you're not paying a hard money lender. So you have no holding costs and you do not pay any taxes when you go to sell the property. None. All taxes are deferred on a self-directed IRA. You just pay taxes as you receive disbursements when you start to take them when you're of age.
The fact that you're teaching your team and you guys are all working together to build this, gosh, what a legacy.
Next level.
What a legacy.
It's great. And we're all women. We're all moms. Kelly recently joined my team. So she is out of West Sac. She's phenomenal. She's actually been an agent for over 20 years. She just was doing other things. She owned a salon and all of that. And so now she's focused back on real estate.
So what's the real reason that you don't have any males on your team, Olivia?
Because we travel, and when we travel, we stay on. Like, we're going to Cabo next week, and we'll all be in the same house. That's how we like to do it. Like,
that's great.
We have so much fun.
I love that. So our business model is this. It's going to be all women, and the main reason is because we like to travel, and when we like to stay in one house, a male figure would mess up that whole routine. The end.
It's not only that, it's just kind of like we have group texts and like a lot of, we don't, I mean, we talk about real estate obviously, but it's kind of like what you guys were talking about before we started the podcast. We don't talk about real estate all the time. We talk about our families. We talk about life. We talk about, like we are each other's backers for the hard things that we go through. When we go through hard shit, it's our team bands together and everybody, shit, Maddie and I lost both of our parents, within the last 4 or 5 years, and so and we are the ones that kind of are the structure of the team and to have everybody pitches in. If you go on a vacation, we got your back. Like, you don't need to worry about it. Like, if you have something going on with your kids that you don't want to miss a performance, don't miss the performance ever, we'll pick it up. We'll make sure that your business, and nobody wants anything. It's just like, you need something, we're there.
I'll cover
You're sick,
you cover me.
We're covering you. Don't worry about it. Just focus on what you need to focus on with your family, with your health, with whatever, and that's just kind of the what we have formed is just something special. So I don't, it's this is going to sound egotistical to say, and I don't mean to sound that way, but like I get asked constantly for people to come onto our team. I do not want to add anybody to our team, and I never intentionally go out and seek somebody to be on the team. Ildia is the only exception of that.
I love that. I love hearing that. It's because you know how important the culture is. What you guys have built, you have this thing, and it could only take one bad apple to mess all of that up.
Kelly came to me, so she was the most recent, was definitely not looking for anybody else on the team. Because I also want to make sure that everybody on the team is fully fed.
Of course.
If I'm ever going to bring on anybody else. It should not be at the detriment of somebody else. And I don't pin people against each other. there's no competition. Everybody's rooting for one another. And everybody has their specific areas of expertise. And that kind of helps when I doll out leads and things like that. We don't do cold calls. We don't do door knocking. Our business is built on referral and repeat. Referral and repeat. Like that is the number I am most proud of is that we have a return rate. So if somebody purchases through us, they will sell through us 97% of the time.
Wow.
And the 3% I know about, it's usually because a family member became an agent and they feel bad and they want to give them their first deal or like, or there's something, you know. But you know, that's something I'm real proud of, and that's something that we've built. And also, we should never have one deal with that person ever.
Yeah.
You know, that should be one person should be at least 5 deals because you should have done such a good job that they will rave about you to other people. That's kind of what our motto is. And as a result of that, we don't have to do the advertising and cold calling and things like that.
That's amazing.
No more billboards.
So no more billboards. So for Kelly, when she approached me, I thought she wanted to talk about brokerages. That's what I thought. So I went to coffee with her, and then she said something about my team. I said, "Did you just say my team?" She was like, yeah. I'm like, you've been an agent for over 20 years. What do you need? A team. I don't know that that's like, but she did. But she wanted, that got your back kind of a thing, and she wants the camaraderie of it. Like, and she fits. It took a while. Like, I went to each individual girl and I asked them because it matters to me. I'm not going to make a decision on behalf of everybody. It needs to be a decision that we make together because this person becomes like family to us.
And that statement right there is what separates it. When everybody knows that you care about them so much, they'll do anything for you, and it's reciprocal. That's amazing. That's why the culture is what it is. Amazing.
Yep.
And I've never had anybody leave. Ever, and I hope to never. The only person is her daughter Jessica, but she's still on the team. It's funny, she comes to like all of our stuff, and then because she's still part of us, and she will, rejoin. But it just is. It's I don't want anybody to ever leave. But I also am rooting for them. If anybody ever wants to go off and do their own thing,
of course,
I am 100% behind that and supportive and whatever they need. Because at the end, that's kind of what the goal is.
It is. It is. I've had plenty of conversations with that. I'll teach you how to be your own broker. I'll be the first one to help you put it in place. So if this is a stop on your goal, perfect. I'm not here to hamper that. I'm here to be the biggest supporter of that. So it's different.
Let's end on this. I want you to talk about this big venture that you've been obviously
Did I
working
hear about
on.
a venue? Is that what
A venue. I'm looking forward to obviously using this venue in different facets, but talk about what you purchased, like approximately when you purchased it, what the vision is, and when is the grand opening?
So it was purchased about 2.5 years ago now. So it's got 5 acres on like a really long, narrow strip. And it's an old seed factory, an 11,000 square foot old seed factory. And it's gorgeous. To me, it's gorgeous.
You have the vision.
It's got the vaulted ceilings, the exposed beams, galvanized metal. Like, it's just really rustic, but in a very cool way. So it's 3 levels. So there's the main venue area, and then there are 2 other levels above it, which will just be private space.
Those are all
now.
enclosed.
All enclosed.
What's the total square footage?
11,000.
And this is in Clarksburg.
This is in Clarksburg. So the main one is 11. Then there's another structure that's 5,000, and then there's another structure that's 3,000.
Is there any usable, I don't know if that's the right word, but usable outdoor space that's tied to this? Like any?
No, I have. So I'm building a deck actually right now around it, but I can't. The entertaining will all be indoors.
Got it.
The space, it's 5 acres, seems like a lot, but it's not a lot. And so it'll all be indoors. There is also a house on the house with an ADU attached to it as well. So we've been Airbnb-ing that out in the meantime while we've been going through the lengthy process with the county.
So somebody can do an event in which they host the event, the gathering. I'm imagining the most use that you'll get out of this will be for wedding
Yeah,
receptions.
it's primarily will be wedding.
And
Although I do like one of the things I really want to do is do a East Coast New Year's every year.
Oh, wow.
Just for families.
Yes.
There isn't a lot of stuff for families to do
What a
on New
great
Year's.
idea.
Yeah.
And
What a
also,
great idea.
if you have kids, like it's hard to get them to stay up until midnight. It's hard for me to stay up until midnight.
I need that nap.
So doing it at 9 o'clock, would be really cool, and
Mm-hmm.
having a space where the kids can also be part of it and dress up, I think is really cool.
That's
so
a great idea.
Do you have a name for
the rustic chandelier.
The rustic chandelier?
It gets better. I can't wait till this is done.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. But
What have been the
I'm
biggest
so
challenges?
excited.
What have been the biggest challenges?
It's a permitting process. So I have 9 permits that I have to go through, and it's each department. There are I think 7 different departments. I have like 14 points of contact at the county. It's a challenge because it's a unique parcel because it's so narrow, and it is surrounded by ag.
Gotcha.
And so that's been the challenge, is to show that we will not disrupt the ag around us. And so I had to come up with a pretty complex solution to that, of how to eliminate overspray of wind, of things like that. So it's been a long one. And then there was like a parcel. So it used to have a train that would pull up to the old seed factory, and that has gone away.
Okay.
But when it went away, they gave it to a landlocked land behind us, and as his easement. Although that gentleman never used it as his easement, because he would just use the main road, because that was always cleared, and so I had to locate this gentleman to get him to give us that section and use our, change the easement to using our road, because I didn't meet the proper setbacks. And it became a big challenge because I couldn't find him. No one knew where he was.
That's wild.
He didn't have a phone. He didn't, older gentleman. And
goodness.
so I finally tracked him down, met with him and his daughter. They were lovely out at the property. But that took about a year total, but like 6 months of really trying to find him and get it done.
That is crazy.
So I finally got that. But that's just like one condition
Yeah.
of the hundreds of conditions that come across from the county. And you have to clear everyone that comes through and figure out how to do it. So, but those things, I'm passionate about it. To see it all come together is worth it. But it's hard. Part of it is just kind of trying to fit it in with everything else.
Yeah.
Like, I already am busy with real estate and running my team and doing the flips and doing the other projects. And then I have also the venue and all of that.
And your
to deal with.
husband and your
my
kids and
my-
traveling and just you know
a
what?
few
But
things.
you're a problem solver, and I've seen you juggle it and manage it, and you do it very well.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna end with this. I don't even know, since I've known you, if you would even be considered. I wouldn't really consider you a foodie, but do you ever take time to eat? Do you eat lunches when you're
I
on
mean,
the
I
go? What
You
are your
take time
so,
to eat?
So what are your top? The question is, what are your top 3 favorite restaurants in Sacramento?
Why am I blanking on the name of it right now? There's one on G Street in downtown that is kind of like a Korean barbecue.
Oh my gosh, I know this spot. I've driven by
Aura?
it. But
I think it's called Aura, right?
I know what you're talking about.
It is so good. My husband and I love it. That one is really good. There's a Japanese place in West Sac, you know it. Tsuki Sushi.
Suki.
Yeah, so it actually means I like in Japanese.
I don't think I've ever been there.
Yeah, it's good.
Wow, okay.
I take my kids there every Wednesday because they get out of, it's a shortened day.
Yeah.
And so it's our tradition.
That's
Every
awesome.
Wednesday, I make sure that I'm done with work in time to pick them up, take them to sushi.
Is it
every
Koja
Wednesday.
Koja Kitchen?
No.
Different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm talking. I'm going back
It's
to
on
the
Lake Washington.
No, I'm
Boulevard.
going back to the Korean barbecue spot.
Oh, what'd you say?
There's one on 7th and K Street. There's one.
No, it's
I
on
said
like
G.
G. I think it's called Aura, if I'm not mistaken. We haven't been there in actually a while. We need to go back.
Wow. Okay.
Those.
Oh, there it is. Aura. It says Aura Japanese and
Yeah.
Korean barbecue.
Oh,
Because they
Wow.
also have Japanese food too. It's amazing.
I'm putting that on my
I
list.
know. I gotta
It's
go.
really. It's kind of like a hole in the wall, but it's really, really good food.
All right, I'm all in on that. Do you
Roy
have a
Yang.
third? Do you have a third?
I know it sounds so generic, but I love the Cheesecake Factory because there's so when you take your kids, like there's so much for everyone to choose from,
Oh.
and the dessert's awesome.
So I got to admit, my first date with my wife was at the Cheesecake Factory, and then that list comes out of the worst places to take your someone on the first date, and that's like listed number one. We
Why?
died laughing at it.
It's so good because
I love it.
you know that they're gonna find something that they like because
Hey,
you know it has
I'm with
everything.
you, so I'm right there with you.
That
That's
was
great.
Ricky and my first date
Are
too.
you
Was
serious?
Cheesecake Factory. Yeah,
That's awesome.
as adults. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hit her with the next question.
Yeah, well, we asked for music next. We want to get an idea of your top 5 artists of all time.
Oh, of all time.
Yeah.
If we're talking all time, then definitely SWV.
Oh my goodness,
Um,
that is such a great first one. I love
By the way,
it.
she said it with confidence.
I-
too.
I love SWV.
in.
I love En Vogue. Erica Badu.
Oh my
Love
goodness.
Erica Badu.
You like the R&B soul.
I like the R&B
Man,
soul.
this
I
is the
love
best list we've had somebody say here so far.
it. Probably because Ricky had me listen to it so much when we started dating, and I love Too Short and
Uh-huh.
E40.
All right.
Um,
Ricky, you're the
It's
best.
just yeah, and probably like I also like soca music and things like that from living in Trinidad.
Oh,
and
man.
like 311, E40, not E40.
311.
So they're kind
311's
of
epic.
more like but when we're like out by the pool
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's an amazing list. That's an
Thanks.
amazing list.
Last but not least, if you can have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
My dad.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
unfortunately he's passed, but yeah,
Oh my
For
goodness.
sure.
I love it.
for sure.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Man, that was fun.
What a one. We're at,
One
yeah.
thing I just wanted to add because I did not say it before and I told you guys on break,
Yes.
but just so you can add it in. It took me 2 hours to get to school every day in Japan on the train. I had to switch 4 trains and then I had to walk through a bamboo forest to get to school. You know how people always are like, back in my day, I walked through the snow. You know, like I
Legit.
walked through like the bamboo forest
Oh.
to get to school, and then I had to hop the fence into the into where like the fields were.
You are an absolute badass.
I mean,
seriously.
like the one word that I'm from doing this podcast with you is the word that comes to mind is resourceful.
Man.
I mean, you had to be very resourceful.
oh,
Had to, because if I
Amazing.
didn't, that would be an extra 15 minutes to walk around the bamboo forest, and I would always going to be late if I did that because I took the very last train I could take to get in. Yeah, 'cause
what
it
a
took
way
so
to
long.
end it. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Love it.
We're out.